down your fishing pole and pick up your worms. It's time for China Spoilers. Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of China Spoilers, the podcast where we talk about making videos, putting them on YouTube, and living in China. I am Emily, and with me as always is Peter.
Living in China.
We are coming to you live to tape from lovely whoopwu studios in Luzhou, Sichuan, China. Today we're going to be talking about collaborating with a writing partner, what it's like to write with someone as opposed to writing alone.
Or against.
Or against someone. Mm-hmm. But first, let's check in with how's your uncle? It's been a busy week here at the offices of whoopwu Studios. We've been getting out and about a lot, Peter and I, all around the city. The weather is hot and wet, but you know, you got to take what you can get. But we've been busy. It's been good. We did a lot of things. I'm a little out of it because I'm super sore from going to the gym. That'll happen too, but it's a good. I'm stronger than ever. I got a cold a few months ago, and so I kind of got out of the habit of going to the gym, and then I was just busy, so I've been ramping back up, and it is like, when you don't go. After a while, it hurts again.
And your coach is intense.
He's very intense, which is good for me, because I was thinking during this last session, because we're doing stuff like burpees with lifting a medicine ball over my head, which is like, that's not something I ever thought I would do in my life. But, like, how does he know? Because sometimes he can see, like, I'm really, really struggling. And so sometimes it's encouragement, and then sometimes it's cut the number of reps, which I'm curious, like, how can he tell? Because that's why I pay him, because I would put the number of reps at, like, 5. So he's the one, like, he's my motivator, and he pushes me to go further than I would otherwise. But, like, he also is trying not to kill me. But how does he know that I'm not actually dying?
Yeah,
that's my question. We're
operating now on possibly that he's training you for some kind of military.
Yeah, I have been doing stuff like that. I don't know, this is probably normal gym equipment, but it's like this long plastic tube with handles in it that looks maybe like a police baton barrier. And I've been doing different exercises where I like lift it up and put it over my shoulder bazooka style, or like I swing it around. And like I come home and tell Peter about these exercises, and he's like, I think you're getting trained for something, which is good. So in the coming global collapse,
yes,
I can take care of myself.
And me.
And you. Yeah. So that's happening. The minor thing that happened this week is, I love it when this happens. So we rent our apartment, but we pay a property fee to the grounds, which, you know, that's not such a strange thing to do. And we pay that quarterly, I think. But so how they signify it's due is they paste a little paper on your door, and then you're supposed to go down to the property office and pay it. But if you don't do that, they'll come to you, which is, I don't know if this is like a punishment, because it incentivizes me not to go to the property office. And because in China you can pay for everything on your phone so easily. They just like knock, knock, knock. I take out my phone, doop, and then we're paid up for another quarter. It's so... Some things about China are like really inconvenient, but this is... Some things they like have figured out. I guess collecting money they figured out how to do.
As long as you remembered your password and all the different passwords that coexist with the other passwords.
Yeah, but it's just like remembering your bank PIN.
And all other 5 or 6.
Mine are all the same.
Don't.
They're not really. But I have a good memory. But the big news this week is that we had like a bunch of earthquakes, which was for this East Coaster pretty frightening. They were so super mild. Here in 𝗖𝗵 is the town over, and it was a little. There were some fatalities. There were like under 20, but still, that's a lot of people to die.
That's enough.
That's enough, and 200 injured. Here in Luzhou, it was very mild shakes, but it happened both times. It happened Monday night and it happened last night, just as I was going to bed, and then like it freaks me out, so then I can't go to sleep, which is,
They felt it in Chengdu, which is what 4 hours by car, so I don't know how long, how many miles that is, but it was enough though that the province itself was like, whoa, wake up.
Yeah, well, I looked up because I don't know anything about earthquakes, and they freak me out. I've been spending the past couple of days like researching what earthquakes are about, and so these were very shallow earthquakes, which means that the waves travel pretty far out. So it does make sense that it would get to Chengdu's a couple 100 kilometers away, but I think because it was only 10 kilometers deep, that the waves
it's pretty shallow.
Travel that far.
They're just worried about their surface looks.
But yeah, so we've made it. We've made an earthquake.
We've
plan.
made it.
No, now I like researched. Like, turns out like the earthquake itself, you'll either get crushed by something or you won't. It's like the aftermath that you have to be prepared for. So we are actually pretty emergency prepared, just because like life in China is a little more edgy than life in America. So we have like clean water on hand at all times, and we have all our documents in one grab and go place.
So tune in next week in case we're a flat cast.
We're on the road. We're on Fury Road. But it's weird because, so where I grew up, we got a lot of hurricanes. And so hurricanes, to me, I mean, I know that they're super destructive, but I am not scared while a hurricane is happening and I am there.
Sometimes you taunt them.
Yeah. But earthquakes, even they were so mild where we were. And I checked in with the USGS, which is the United States Geological Survey. They encourage you to register, like, did you feel it? And then they have a little survey that you take. And as I'm going through the survey questions, I'm realizing, like, how ridiculous the level of fear I was experiencing for what happened. It's like, did doors shake open and close? Did lighting fixtures on the ceiling, how violently were they shaking? And ours was like, our little light on the cheapy stand was going like this. So it was like, oh, were appliances turned over? No. What did you do when the earthquake happened? I ran into the living room. Like, if it was a serious, real earthquake, you wouldn't run anywhere.
You'd be toppled towards the wall.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we are on the 28th floor, so it's freaky, but the building is designed to kind of wobble rather than just absorb the force of the shock. That's just physics.
So it was like a roller coaster. It was like
yeah.
Disney Shanghai.
I hate roller coasters, though. I do not go on roller coasters, and I do not like earthquakes. They freak me out.
Or Disney.
I don't have a problem with Disney. Disney was fun. I went once.
Once.
When I was young.
Never went back.
Well,
you hate it. Admit it.
I didn't. I lived in New York. I wasn't like close to Disney.
You got Times Square. Go on.
But anyway, so that's been on my mind. Earthquake safety and earthquake preparedness, and the thing to do if you're in bed is just cover your face with a pillow. And so now I'm prepared. The Monday night one took everybody it was because it wasn't violently shaky, but it did go on for a long time. Because usually in my life, the count on two hands number of times I've been in an earthquake, by the time you notice it, it's kind of over. And this one did go on for a minute.
It was on social media.
Yeah, and then so everybody, we could see people were pouring out of the building who were on the lower floors, but everybody was taking the elevator. So we did a risk calculation.
You went into the hallway to talk to our neighbor.
Yeah, and so our neighbor was just it was nervous laughter, but she was like, oh, and so we decided to stay put and
ride it out.
Then it was fine.
On the top of the building.
Ride it out. Yeah. And And that, I think, doing my research, given that there was no structural damage, was the right call. So far. Earthquakes made me nervous.
Fair enough.
And we've had 2 of them. That feels like too many.
This week.
Yeah.
Apparently we had more, right?
Yeah, but there was one like a couple weeks ago as well, but we didn't feel that one. That one was a little further away. And the Monday night one was actually like 6. Registered 6 different events.
Oh. I don't know what that means.
It was like
a 6 on a scale.
Well, actually,
or there was 6 different earthquakes.
Coincidentally, yes, there was a magnitude of 6. Not here. It was not a magnitude of 6, but at the epicenter, it was a magnitude of 6, and then there were like 6 aftershocks.
Whoa. One more 6, and that's the devil. Speaking of apocalypse.
Last night's was a 5.3. Oh. So.
It's 665.3. That's the channel of the devil.
The neighbor of the beast. That's not my joke, but.
There you go.
Let's go on to our new section is cross-cultural communication. We don't have a zippy title.
But let's do this.
Yet.
Mandarin.
So just thinking about our life in China, talking about our life in China, a big part of the challenge of living in a foreign country is, of course, talking to people in a different language who have a different cultural background.
During earthquakes.
Yeah, during earthquakes. That actually was fairly easy. I asked her, should we go downstairs? And she was like, let me ask. And then she just went back in her apartment, and we did the same.
Cross-cultural conversation.
Yeah.
Walk back into your apartment.
Yeah. But something that's been on my mind is that joking around in a foreign language is really hard. Partly because not every culture has the same idea of what is funny. And Peter and I, we like funny. So we've been thinking about this since we got here, and it does seem that's what is valued as funny in Chinese culture, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I welcome it, is stating a counterfactual and then laughing at it, just like saying something that's not true.
Do you have an example?
That's the joke. I don't have a good example, but why this is on my mind is because I have been having some banter with our doorman. He likes to ask me about Peter, what's Peter up to? Yeah. And our current joke, I think, is because he asked me about, because Peter, for those of you who don't know, Peter 2 years ago was very sick, and he's been recovering ever since. And unrelated, Peter does not teach English. He works in our house making YouTube videos and art. That's what he's doing full time. Lucky him. So that it's not a joke that when the doorman asked me, is Peter at work? And I said, no, he's working in our house. And I think that he thinks I'm joking about that. But you are doing work in our house. You don't get paid for it yet, but that's the life we have.
Well, and how much is there actual like work from home here? I don't really know that many people that I've come across, anyways. That
yeah, I don't. Maybe it's not super common, and it's probably not super common to be a freelance artist.
Particularly way out here in the boonies.
Yeah, we don't have a thriving cultural scene that would support, doing art as a living here in Luzhou.
We do. It's called a foreign teacher. You.
Yeah, and so that's part of the joke. And then he asks me if you're busy making lunch, which I think, this is the small talk conversation we have every day at lunch. But I think he thinks it's a joke. But, no, he is working in the house. And he would be making lunch if we didn't order lunch.
But it's funny.
But it's weird. And then another, So there's that, and we have this banter kind of every day. Or like if it's raining, we'll talk about the rain, and that's not a joke. That's just is like people talk about the weather. But the other day we did have like some kind of exchange where he was like telling me about a package, and then like the package wasn't there, and then he was laughing. So I don't know. This is my.
Could it be the tragedy that possibly it was delivered and you didn't pick it up, so he sent it back? So ha ha ha.
I mean, maybe there is a package. I ordered a hole punch that has supposed to have been arrived, and it hasn't arrived. I don't know. So
that would constitute, from what you've said and what we've seen, is like as isn't that funny? Like you missed out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is. It's
not in like let's make fun of a foreigner way.
It's factually mean-spirited, but the feeling of that kind of exchange wouldn't be mean-spirited.
We saw that like at the school, like all of like our students and their teachers, their Chinese teachers, like it was a running joke to be like, ha ha, you're miserable, ha ha, no, you're miserable.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and I think it's not it's a bonding moment.
Yeah. Even
though it's the content is somewhat aggressive.
So we suspect. Because people have done it to us and it didn't feel mean-spirited.
Yeah,
You'd be out at dinner with people and people would like, hey, I mean, it's kind of like bro-ish kind of humor of like, and it's not just like from its men or anything, but like in America, like when guys get together and we're like, hey, hey, stupid head. I don't know what guys say, but.
Yeah, I think that might be part of it.
Women do it too. Hey, bitches. Like, it's the same kind of. We'll all commiserate with like getting through another day on this stupid planet.
Yeah, yeah. So in that respect, like we can find an analog in American culture, but it is what's confusing about it is like then you have to parse two different meanings going on. Like you have the actual words, what they mean, and then like the greater meta context of what the conversation is trying to achieve. So, I mean, I think that's for me what is challenging when people I know start to joke with me. Even though I like jokes, but then it's like, oh geez, I don't know what we're saying here. But I mean, it also on some level signifies that my language is getting there good enough to joke around, so I'm proud of that, and that like people feel comfortable joking with me, which is nice too.
It helps with being in a neighborhood long enough that you see the same guy every day. At some point, he's either going to like you or he doesn't like you. So a smile helps. Yeah.
I mean, I guess another example would be at the gym if I'm like, really struggling, and my trainer will laugh like, you're struggling, keep going. I mean, he's very encouraging, and I don't feel like he's making fun of me, but it's an interesting fine line of like,
and also
again, that like I could see how that might feel alienating if you're feeling bad about other stuff in your life,
right? And also, partially, I would think. Here in Sichuan, we're pretty rough and tumble country city. Yeah. Like there is like a very like, well, you fell down, better pick yourself up, gotta keep going.
Yeah. I don't know, anecdotally, Tom and Jerry is a very popular cartoon here. Maybe farce is just well enjoyed even if it's your real life. Yeah. But it is hard because
we've seen people like when I was at the hospital and there's a woman. So I forget what the whole story was, but like her husband and her were hit by a car, or her husband died, or it's a horrible tragedy. And,
that's right.
And our doctor, who's a very compassionate guy, was like laughing with her of like, oh yeah, and that's it. Try and walk now, haha, or whatever. I don't remember what the story was, but
I do remember. But it was a sad circumstance.
But even in the hospital,
but they were kind of laughing and joking about it. Yeah.
In hospitals, the attendants, the doctors, everyone has like a darker sense of humor. Yeah. But this flowed with the patients very easily.
Also had a dark sense of humor about their situation.
I mean, I definitely there was points where I felt like I was like, well, we don't really need to be making fun of me here. All right, I guess we are. That's fine.
Yeah, I felt that too at some points. But yeah, I think, I don't know. And then from the other side of it, sometimes when I try to say jokes in Chinese, that's really hard. I don't think I've successfully made a joke in Chinese. Because for whatever, if I mangle the grammar, then the sentence is just unintelligible. And so if I'm saying a weird thing, they can't even, like, guess what I'm trying to say.
And then inadvertently you say a word that sounds like a word that would be funny in Chinese, and they laugh, and you're like, whoa, what are you laughing at? They're like, you said the number 8.
Yeah, well, it's like my kindergartners, when we do the alphabet, Fang Pi means to fart, and so when we say P, pa, they're like, that's hilarious!
Of course it's hilarious.
But, you know, kindergartners, so they're allowed to be unsophisticated. But yeah, so that's just thinking about how hard it is to tell jokes. It's hard to tell good jokes in your own country.
Yeah,
culture.
and really,
because I think it's highly contextual on, like, a shared value system. Really.
And I feel like whenever we go out anywhere, in the cab, at the mall, in a small market, at a restaurant, like, with our local neighbors, like, we do a lot of laughing, whether they're our neighbors or they're strangers. Like, everyone's always laughing.
Yeah, and that, I think,
they're laughing at us, but like, no, but we're laughing with them.
We'll clown around and play up what's funny about us being foreigners sometimes.
Yeah,
we're not ashamed to get a laugh that way.
And vice versa too. They have a sense of humor about themselves, and they'll like, you know, maybe tell a joke about their friend who's at the table with us, and they're like, "This guy over here," like, "Yeah, we got it."
Yeah, and I think it's part of why we like living in Sichuan, is because part of the measure of a good time is, like, how loud your table is being. Mm-hmm. So it is like, if you're laughing and just, like, being loud, everyone's like, they know how to have a good time. Mm-hmm. So that's fun.
Kudos to fun.
Even if we don't always understand it. But let's go on to conduct some business. So our YouTube channel is Hello Foreigner on YouTube, and you can listen to this particular series, our China Spoilers podcast, on iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcatcher you like. But primarily, the home of what we're doing right now is on YouTube under the channel Hello Foreigner. So we want to talk about some of our successful YouTube numbers. Just to toot our own horn, we are almost at 200 subscribers, which is big deal. Maybe by the time we put this up, you could be subscriber number 200. And we have a couple of videos that have over 500 views, which again, that's record breaking for us.
Well over,
which is
550 something.
Yeah. So it's exciting. It's definitely something when we started the channel, I would say I would, like, check the numbers every day and look over the analytics and blah, blah, blah. And in recent months, I kind of have let that go, which makes me feel good, because I don't care to obsess over, like, we lost a subscriber, we gained a subscriber, we lost, we gained.
Because it just happens all the time.
Yeah, and it does it's kind of irrelevant to the creative work we do, because that's it's out of our control. So it is. Like, there are strategies and tactics we could do to kind of influence the numbers for the better, but really that focus is better served towards making the new work.
And we started this with the idea that we're going to do this as a creative project to get better at all of these skills, but there's a certain amount of starting a channel. You have to, like, how does this channel work? How do we get numbers? How do we get seen? How do we change the algorithms to blah, 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 blah.
And to some degree, it felt really like hard. An insult. Like, anybody can have a YouTube channel. Yeah. These idiots have 1,000 subscribers. Right. Wait a second, why don't we have any subscribers? So there was, like, a little bit of pride in the initial slow start that we were like, we have to do better than this.
Yeah.
But like, I feel after we hit 100 and then it kind of started gathering steam on its own, I felt like I could disengage from wishing the number higher every day, because that's basically all I could do. You pay a little more attention to the numbers.
Yeah, well,
but in a constructive way. I don't want to say it's all just wishing.
Yeah, when a lot of it is like pushing the video itself, the address around from site to site, from social group to social group, and like it gets exhausting. And at some point, like I'm reaching the point now too, where like we've established that we can get a few people to watch us. Yeah. Now let's stop trying to rather than me spending hours trying to break into Instagram or something like that. Let's just focus on making our videos and making them better. Not that our videos were bad. We love our old videos, but like now it's just the reason why we started was to learn how to make really amazing videos. So we want to go from amazing to really amazing, and that's what we're working on now.
And the big push that we're working on now is kind of expanding out the kind of content we do. We talked about this last week, that we had this kind of formula for a Giraffe Sesame Street style episode where we have the Giraffe host and a couple different segments that come in and out, and we love those. We love making those, and we kind of are closing the book on that to expand out for the time being, to expand out our stable of characters, I guess. Really, I mean, it's only me and Peter, but Peter has been appearing more and more, and we'll talk about this in the commentary. But now, like, Peter is we're writing stuff specifically for Peter. He's not just like there in the background. And then as we go along, the Giraffe is probably going to continue a little bit, but we're also going to write pieces for me not in a giraffe suit, which is exciting. But so all of that is to say, it's fun to have these milestones, and it's also fun to like only look up at the milestones and not have to track like every one up or down.
Yeah, and especially now that we've like integrated a whole bunch of other. When we were doing 3 channels, and now they're all back into the same fold, and they're all part of the same story in the same creative process. So it consolidates everything and makes it a lot easier for us to like track and like look quickly. Like, well, if we do one of these kinds of, we do a long video here, we do a short video there, then they can balance each other out. We've not like, I mean, our other 2 channels kind of, we just didn't pay any attention to, like, which was nice for those. But like, now they're helping the main channel grow.
Yeah.
So.
And we're just making what we want to make next. So that's, I'd recommend that. That's not the advice they give you, but I think it depends. Do you want your channel to be like a successful marketing scheme, or do you want to access your art and be creative and make work that you care about?
And there's no way. Like, here's a good story from this week. So we have we were divided up between our main vlogging channel, and we had Western Toilet, which is our music channel, which takes the music that's composed for the vlogs and then just puts it as a song on the other channel. So now we push those back together, and those Western Toilet music videos, they have some video footage on there that's just kind of thrown in for like the background. It's there for you to listen to. It's a music channel. So whenever I post, occasionally I'll post those music ones on music stations on and subreddits on Reddit, and that one of the groups there had put under our latest one, the one with the painting. So it's just a picture of a painting with music over it, and they commented underneath that this Hello Foreigner group is just like blatantly stealing this Western Toilet's music and calling it their own. And
really?
And yeah.
No!
We're stealing Western Toilet's music and making these exceedingly subpar videos, which is sad because the music is actually pretty well done.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
And that's like a good case for not having Western Toilet be a separate channel.
Yeah.
Because, no, that's all us.
Right. So I wrote back and I explained how like, we that is actually us. I mean, it's kind of funny that you're saying that we're stealing.
Thanks for defending us.
Yeah, and I said thank you for for complimenting our however you said the music. You like the music even though our videos are subpar or whatever, and he wrote back, "I don't believe you. Please don't post here anymore." So
that's weirdly hostile.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with these things, like these are the kinds of stuff that you have to, like, if I'm pushing this out and I'm worried about how people are perceiving things and how, I mean, there's the information is there that Western Toilet is us. It's the music that we're making for our videos. Like you only have to scratch the surface to tell that this music is being made for Hello Foreigner by an entity that is us, that is Western Toilet. It's not that hard to figure out. We actually just give you the links, even if it wasn't a different band, we still give you the link of where it comes from on SoundCloud to go check out that band, which you would see as us and our faces and everything like that. But the dealing with this kind of annoyance is why people get so upset with this, and it bogs you down. If I was still worried about this, like now it's a funny joke, but like at the time now as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to need to address this.
Yeah.
Like, no, how about we just go make another video and forget about it.
Well, and we were just kind of talking before that, like, before our podcast today, that the act of being admired, like, or fandom, the fanning towards an entity, whether that's us or whether that's Whitney Houston, I don't know, famous people, there's not a reciprocal, like, Whitney Houston when she was alive did not feel your admiration and love and fandom. Like that wasn't, that's not a two-way street.
She don't know you.
Yeah, and whereas like social media has kind of pushed that to the forefront, I think maybe not in a very healthy way, because it like the respect of our peers and the appreciation of our fans, like that is important to us insofar as like it's meaningful that someone is connecting with the thing that we made, but it's not like being admired bumps up my health points for the day or whatever. Like it doesn't make me a happier person, and getting addicted to like seeing that the thumbs up go up, I don't think is good for anybody, because that's like the secondary reason to make art is because other people like it. The first reason is because I like it.
Yeah. I
like the act of making. So, I mean, I'm a big advocate for detaching from all that. And I acknowledge that I can do that because Peter does the work that is necessary, that you do have to connect.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're talking Whitney Houston or whoever, even tiny little minor stars have press people that are going out and taking care of these things. It's just not... It's not conducive to the artist to do that, but with things like social media, especially if you're more like art-based on something like YouTube, like where you're actually creating stuff. You're not just like commenting on other people or commenting on, I don't know, armchair politics or something useless. That you are actually, I'm creating a new thing out of nothing. If you're doing it for other people, then it's just nothing but like, that's how there's so many people that are having like breakdowns in this medium that are just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Just everyone seems to hate me. Like even if I get 5 likes, I get 3 dislikes, and I don't know if I can stand it anymore. Like I mean, YouTube knows it, even that if they're not doing anything about it. Like they know that people
I think that social feedback is what makes the platform addictive. But that's not healthy at all. And the feeling of like unmooredness of like you don't know what your direction is. It means that you're being too pushed around by what other people think. So I think that's how I deal with it.
If you have to worry
ignore it.
If you have to worry about being creative, whether people are going to hate you for being creative, like, why would you bother doing anything at all? Yeah,
because on I think the addictive system of likes and every passing stranger passing judgment on you, negative. But there is the bonus of social media of like we have virtually met and talked to interesting people who we would never have had the chance to have to exchange words with. So it's not all bad.
Yeah.
But it is, I think...
Well, predominantly...
It's up to you. You have to, like, maintain your focus and, like, having online conversations that stimulate you, that's the bonus. Getting obsessed with, like, my video doesn't have enough views and the amount of time I wanted to have views, that's not so bonus.
Right. Well, usually, for most artists, it does tend to be that you get surrounded by nothing but mostly positive. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anyone at all viewing or going to your concert or watching your TV show or going to see
and there
your
is
movies
something
or whatever,
to be said just like for being fragile and needing someone to like pump you up.
Right. But
having a fan.
But it tends to be that if you get 5 people that absolutely love your work, it's the one person that's going to say like, hey, actually you stink, and that's the person you're going to think about all day long.
Yeah.
That's what erodes
your
mental health.
So take care of yourselves. Yeah. One last kind of back to channel business is, so in service of the kind of new experimental direction we're going in, YouTube and the internet in general is a sea of contextless content. So we've tried to, we've spruced up our homepage to make the layout kind of make a little more sense out of playlists.
User-friendly.
Yeah, user-friendly, because it is like, we know, the any given thing you look at on the internet is like, what the hell is this?
And you don't know if we're making videos of how to live in China or how to teach in a foreign country, or whether we're a band or we're a YouTube station that's stealing a band's music that is our own.
And is this a channel featuring me? Is this a channel featuring Peter? Is this a channel featuring a giraffe? So we are kind of organizing our content to make sure that it is accessible and approachable.
At least as much as we need it to be.
Yeah.
The
way we talk about it internally is like having a store. Like, you don't just dump all your products on the floor and like let people sort it out. You make some semblance of order.
Unless it's Filene's basement.
Well, yeah. But we're not a bargain. We are full price.
Nothing but quality views.
But yeah, you want to make it look good. So Peter did a little work on that this week.
And you're gonna finish it up.
And I'm gonna finish it up. But let's move on to homeschool. A quick tidbit before we get into the meat of our topic this week is, so we've mentioned in the past we have a knockoff no-name action cam that has been broken for the past couple months. It's in the living room, but it's not here. And I fixed it yesterday by figuring out that all along these few months I've been pressing the record button, not the on-off button, and so that's why it hasn't been turning on. So it's not broken.
Ta-da!
So that's your official. Have you tried turning it on and off again? Reminder.
Which is like one of your pet peeves in life.
Yeah.
Not no. The thing is that it's a knockoff of a GoPro. So and the price definitely, clued you in if you didn't know. So when we got it, it definitely did not do what we thought it did. But we could use it for a few little things, whatever. So if it broke, it broke. We were kind of easy to just be like, well, I guess that's that. Well, let's check it one more time. Oh, the button.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there has been stuff that it is like it's glitchy sometimes, and the image quality is not as good as advertised. So we were kind of like, of course it broke like 8 months in. And like, no, it actually wasn't broken. Just needed to be charged, and then you needed to press the right button.
And then it goes back to its usually crappy working self.
Yeah, which is good enough for us. Yeah. We've got to clutch together.
You go back and watch our videos, and you see if you can see which crappy camera we're talking about.
Our petting zoo of equipment. But yeah, so it was satisfying to figure that out, and then like a little bit embarrassing that is what the problem was. But keep working, and you'll figure it out. But let's talk about writing. So Peter and I have been writing a lot more together, which is a unique experience for both of us.
And just not that we where everything was willy-nilly in the past. You did write stuff.
Well, we had kind of a separation of craft, of like I would do this part and you would do this part, and we'd give each other feedback about our separate parts. But now with the past couple scripts that we wrote are very much. It's not like we talk about an idea together, I go away and write it, and then we look at it together. It is like word by word we write it together, which is tricky to do. I've done collaborative writing in the past with other partners, and I have not always found it a fruitful experience.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I can tell you how we work. I don't know if I can tell you why it works better than in the past. Maybe it's just Peter and I have discussed our viewpoint and creative goals so much that we're already on the same wavelength, whereas like with other...
We do have a common goal as to what we're doing as an art project. We're not just like throwing videos out into space. We actually know what we're doing. It's just a matter of figuring out how to get there.
Yeah, and I think where it has not been successful for me with people in the past is that we maybe weren't so creatively aligned at the start, and then when we got going, it was like, I want to go over this way, I want to go over this way. This isn't working out.
That's what happened to the Beatles and Van Halen.
Yeah. But a big part of the formula is actually that we leave the house to go. We have our studio here, of course, but it feels like a treat to go out to the coffee shop to write, but it is also like we have no excuses for not getting down to business if we're at someone else's place. Like here in our apartment, we can go, I'll just go make a cup of tea and clip my nails. And
it's a standard cliche, of course, that you're going to go to Starbucks and work. And we don't go to Starbucks, but we do go to a coffee shop, and it does make it easier to you. You sit down and focus. Yeah,
it's very hugely beneficial for focusing. I always found that. And I think, that's one of the things when we are a money-making operation, I think like having an office to go to every day.
Or we buy a coffee house.
Is important. Or we buy a coffee house. I'm not really interested in
managing a coffee
restaurant management, no. But I think having a place to go to just like it feels like you're going to work, even if you're working for yourself. And so we didn't invent that. That's a big thing everybody says. And then but how we've been like, so what we do, I guess I'll start there, is that one or the other of us will pick out a premise, and actually I have a whole notebook going of ideas that come to me, and Peter has a list of ideas that he's been having too. So we choose a premise that kind of speaks to us, and then we start from there. We maybe sometimes there's like an immediate line that occurs to one or the other of us, or a joke. But then we kind of build.
We also have running notebooks we're creating those by actual like lines that do happen in real life that we're like, write that one down, and then that's how we make up our lists. Yeah.
Like I have kid in a 3-piece suit written down in a notebook because I saw a small child wearing a 3-piece suit, and it was great. And we don't know where that's going to go, but it's going to go somewhere.
Keep your eyes open.
And then I think what's helping, so we've talked a bit about like that we are starting to focus on character rather than scenario. So it is like we've picked the scenario, but then if we're writing a Peter script, we think like, how would this character react to that scenario? And that's actually what's important, not so much like what the plot of what happening is. And so Peter's character we've kind of developed over the past couple weeks. We originally nicknamed him the China Splainer, as a reference to mansplaining that happens in China
and
everywhere. But that like specifically explaining China in a way, in an authoritative way that is unearned, but more than just a parody of like know-it-all guys. We've decided that Peter the China Splainer, and this is an unwieldy name, so we're trying to think of something different to call him, because
Peter.
Just calling him Peter is a little confusing because that's really who you are. But Peter, the character, I guess we can say,
still way unwieldy.
is, yes, he wants to explain everything to you, but it was too subtle, I think, we felt, to just get stuff wrong, because people might think we were wrong, not trying to be wrong on purpose. So Peter, the character, we've decided is kind of a maniac. And that all kind of was encapsulated by the haircut video, where he explains how to get a haircut, in which he claims to have trained his hair not to grow, so he never needs a haircut. Like, because he says a couple of outrageous things in that video, but we wanted to make it clear, like, that we, the real Emily and Peter as writers, know that they're actually outrageous, so we wanted to, like, push it as far as we can go.
Depending on who you are, you might just believe that I've trained my hair, but which is the amount of, like, how far you have to press character, and this isn't just for YouTube, or even in this day and age, like
any satire that's sufficiently good is indistinguishable from truth, so we wanted to make sure, like, people don't think that these are the views of Hello Foreigner.
Well, rather than just kind of like, and this is part of us, because we struggled so much with, like, do we even call ourselves a vlog from the very beginning, like, because we didn't really feel comfortable, and we don't want to sit in front of the camera and tell you that this is what happened in our boring life, or this is how your boring life should be, more like ours, or whatever that format is.
But life is boring overall.
No matter what, life is going to be boring. But the more that we wrote and made these videos as, like, our strange version of ourselves, it was what we thought was funny. People would just think is just we're just bleh. Like, so to find out how far we have to keep pushing things to make them absolutely ridiculous is astonishing to us. Like, really? We really have to say this? All right, here's the joke now. And then it finally lands.
But, I mean, also, we like that kind of humor. Like, we like the absurdism.
Yeah.
And I, in particular, not being a fan of explaining things, like mixing the absurdity with the explanation.
Well, it makes it
as a commentary on how absurd it is to try to explain every single thing.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more freeing because it does feel a little bit more precious if you're like, we're just kind of like putting stuff on tape, and we think it's kind of funny, and if someone's like, that's not funny at all, we're like, oh, I'm sorry to upset you. Whereas in, like, if we're just literally writing these things to be like, okay, we find this absolutely absurd, and if you don't get it, like, I don't really care. Now it's fun. Now we don't have to be worried about, like, are we hurting people's feelings? Because we're not doing anything bad, so I'm not worried about it. But, like, if you don't catch on as to what we're saying, like, that's cool, move along.
Yeah, we fully accept, like, there's people who are not going to be into what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we started from a place of, like, everybody should like this. And, like,
nice.
that's...
We're so nice.
We're so nice. But we're not nice. But as far as the process goes, so we come at it from that mindset of what would this character say. And then I think, literally it is us saying lines to each other, and then I write them down. I type them down. But I think, especially because this is for a piece that's to be performed rather than, like, a book to be read or an article to be read, it is important that we say them out loud to each other. So that as we're going along, there's even stuff like, we had a line where I said a ton of something.
And, the words matter.
Yeah, that the words matter, and, like, there was a consonance there that if we changed it to a bunch of bees versus a ton of bees, like, so saying it out loud helps you hear it. And, like, that's also, this may sound, like, super obvious, but, like, before you go to camera, make sure, like, you read through the whole thing at least once. Because that, like, you hear where stuff is working or not working, and so I think that's like a crucial. Just keep reading it out loud is a big crucial part.
Right,
of our
because
process.
once the words matter, and then the performance matters afterwards.
Yeah.
Like if you are getting those. I mean, it's funny. We're rewatching those couple episodes of with Will Ferrell in The Office.
Mm-hmm.
Like so much of what he says on paper just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because it's not because it's so weird, but because it's so boring. Like that. I mean, that's pretty much. I mean, I'm not a huge fan or anything, but like from what I've seen of a lot of his stuff, is he plays the average boring guy to an extreme that like breaks at some point. So it happens in his line of like what, like the one that always sticks out for me was, and I didn't even watch the movie. It was I think with Mark Wahlberg, where they're cops or something like that, and they're sitting in an office, and he takes a glass with a cucumber. He's like, "That is refreshing." Like, I don't know what the context of his character is or whatever, but like that was enough to tell me of like, guy looks funny, says a normal thing that interrupts this able to
is disruptive normalcy.
There's something to how he delivers these things that are absolutely bland that makes him hilarious.
Yeah.
The performance of that is something that I mean, we're not actors. We never tried to do that. So trying to like write these words going like, that's funny. What do I do now? Oh crap, I got to act it.
Right. Well, and that's that. I mean, we're trying to make each other laugh as we're putting it down on paper, and it is like if something makes us laugh, it's in. If something is like, if you get the oh, that's funny, like that's not good enough, and so that's our standard for what gets written down. And then I guess I'm interested in this because the way we're shooting it is Peter doesn't memorize it. I read him the line from the script, and then he says it in his 𝗖𝗵cie character. And when we started doing this, I was kind of giving you a reading like if I was reading the script. But I don't know if you've noticed, I've tried to kind of neutralize how I'm giving you the lines. And then you kind of, does that, have you noticed that? Do you?
What it does for me is it that technique where people, like the one that everyone talks about with Christopher Walken, where he erases all the punctuation and stuff. Like, if I'm being fed a line, all I have is an immediate reaction. I mean, we wrote the lines, so I know what they are and what they're supposed to mean. But throwing out, I think we talked about it in the last one, where not the characters can't know what the character's going to say next.
Yes.
Like everything has to be a surprise. So I'm blanking out my mind. You're reading me the line, and I'm like, how do I react to that? I react to it this way, and no, we'll try it again. I'll react to this way, and then pick up the best one afterwards. Good thing for editing. So, like, it is a matter of like I'm forgetting what's happening and then reacting to it.
Right.
Because I can't remember my lines.
Because there is, I mean, you make very different choices than what I would have made with the same script. And that makes sense because you are acting out a different character. We are also working on Emily, the character.
And continuing the
giraffe. But yeah, so the giraffe with the same words, for example, would have a very different reading and feeling behind the things that she's saying. And
also would not say the same words.
Well, and then, that's even further, is that we would use different words, and we do use different words. And there has been some times where we say a line and while we're writing, and like, that's not the word Peter would use. So we have to, find a different word.
Yeah.
There is sometimes just word brainstorms, which is, that's writing. That's what writing is, word brainstorming. But yeah, it's been a fun experiment writing together.
Well, it gives a lot more of. I mean, I've tried writing myself, and I've always found that like characters, like most writers, you've talked about it yourself, that like you tend to write. Here's the 10 different versions of me in this story.
Yeah.
This is me with long hair. This is me with short hair. This is me as a woman. This is me as a dog. Let's see how they all react. Oh, the same. How that's wonderful.
Yeah. So it's even though we know each other so well, it is like interesting to get that glimpse into each other. Like, oh, that's what you react that way to stuff, and I react this way to stuff. And I think, oh no, I lost my train of thought.
Reacting differently to each other and writing into partners. I'm a dog, you're a giraffe.
That! You are much less precious, I've noticed, about in the editing process. So we, generally do a first draft and then the next day do a second draft or however many drafts that we need, because that's where writing happens, in rewriting. But I've noticed, like, sometimes we'll get to a joke and you'll be like, nah, that's not working. And I'll be like, but that was your joke. We wrote it down. It's written down. Do we fix it?
Nope. Throw it away.
We can just cut it, which is, that's good. That's a good way to be, I think.
Or try and save it for another time.
Yeah. But it does, I'm much more like, if it's written down, that's what we're doing. So we either have to work with it or fix it. And you are much more like, I don't like that today.
Well, yeah, if it didn't work that day, that's a thing. If it doesn't really work in general, maybe it worked last week.
It was just when we start like talking about something, and then like the next day I'll bring it back to you, and you'll be like, "Oh, it's just a suggestion. We could do something different."
Yeah. Well, anything to like usually, I think that's where like, because so much of what I do is right here behind the computer. Mm-hmm. Physically, even though it's on the screen, I'm physically manipulating sounds, notes, pictures, colors. So like, if I'm like looking for like a color palette of how a picture should look, I'm not like thinking like, this one has to be pink. This has got to be pink.
Right.
Maybe it's this kind of pink. Maybe it's that kind of pink. Like, it's easy for me to just wipe that aside and be like, blue. Let's try it again. Like,
yeah.
There's editing process that is, you got to keep the train moving forward, or else you're going to get stagnant. And then next thing you know, like you're saying, like it's at home. I'm going to go make some tea. I'm going to go like maybe do something else, and then you forget like, oh crap, what I was doing? I was avoiding pink. Was that what I was doing all the time?
Well, and I, not to say like, oh, your way of working is so good and my way of working is so bad. Mm-hmm. I think that actually there are good ways that work in concert together, because I will.
I'll forget whole passages of things.
Yeah. So I feel like I maintain the integrity of our structure, and you are good at like pushing and pulling it in ways.
Because sometimes I've
ways.
I've dismissed something, and you're like, well, what about this whole thing? And I'm like, I don't know, what was that? Like, oh, so you want to get rid of it? Like,
that's
I don't
the
know,
whole crux of what we're doing.
And then you read it back to me, and I'm like, oh, that's really good. Did we do that?
Yeah. So it is. I think it's good to have two different creative types in a collaboration, and so that's what's working for me too. So good job, us.
Just like Beatles and Van Halen.
Yeah. Is there anything more specifically about the writing process that you want to talk about, or do you want to move on to talk about individual videos?
Well, yeah, we are going to do. We're going to do the same kind of stuff for you and for the giraffe, and then hopefully through these, as we develop these characters, we're going to integrate them more and more into it. Like if we're going to spend, let's say, whatever the next month or two or whatever working on small characters, the hope is to bring these characters together and go back to making bigger pieces after we've developed these kind of tools. We've spent so much time on the physical side of how to make cameras that don't work and and lights and things like that we're part of. It's not just me. We just put those 3 videos out the last 3 days, and we're going to start writing on your character, and we're going to start putting the giraffe, and then figuring out how all these characters live together in China, in Wuzhou.
And so, I would say it's been a pretty natural evolution from around February, just like we'd kind of discuss a topic or a theme and then turn the camera on and I would riff towards where we kind of discussed the theme more than just like mentioning 2 words, and then to where we got to like, here's the ideas, let's think of a good 1 or 2 liner on that subject, to like full on we're focusing on writing now. Like there's no
There's no ad-libbing.
We went from an improv situation to improv where most of our creative days would be spent shooting, to now most of our creative days are spent writing. And then the shoot is, now that we have a tight script, the shoot's fairly quick.
Yeah, just jam right through it. And so, yeah, all the work, I think, as a writing tool is the most of our work is now in writing for, the meantime, until we decide to put us in space or something with the green screen.
Until we go back to improv in 6 weeks. But let's go on to commentary. We'll start with a brief detour into a Western toilet video, the best Chinese painting, which is the painting, we've talked about it several times. It's a painting we saw in Chengdu and we really liked, and then the bar where we saw it got torn down and we have no idea what happened to this painting. This is the
painting that earlier person on subreddit commented about, of how somebody's stealing this great music to make these crappy videos, which is...
Does he not like the music videos, or he doesn't like the...
He doesn't like the music videos. He doesn't know anything about Hello Foreigner.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't like the Hello Foreigner music videos that we were putting...
That go with the music of Western Toilet. Okay.
Yeah, so he's looking at this video, which is just a still of this one painting. We close up on it slowly through the thing, but it's a still of this one painting, deliberately made for you to look at the painting while you listen to the music, because we put the music to the story elsewhere, so you don't know that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But this is a music video posted in a music forum. It's not a video forum. I'm just adding in the video.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
like
he's expecting just a SoundCloud,
or a music video, which people put to this, or if it's on YouTube, it's just a picture or something like. And he's seen one or two of them, and a lot of it is. Yeah, it's just like background for the music. I'm not it's not a fully produced music video. I'm not Jay-Z here. So there.
But there is intentionality in pairing the music with this visual.
Yeah, yeah. So seeing this video and being like, it's pretty good music, but like these people are stealing somebody else's music to put to their video is
to their crappy
video. It wouldn't be a video. All I did was just show a painting.
Yeah.
And please listen to the music. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the music's pretty good, but, like, why are you stealing it?
Yeah, that's funny. But so, to get back to the intentionality of why this song with this image is because the music comes from our art. Art, a couple of punks in China.
Foreigners want art.
Foreigners want art. We've retitled a lot of things many times, so but so the vlog video was about like our experience of seeking out art in China, and so we brought up this painting, and I don't know if we discussed. It might have just been an in-studio discussion of like what it means to really look at art, and so this video took this piece of art that we really like and like asked you to hold your gaze, if you are in fact watching the video, not just listening to the track, hold your gaze on this picture for 3 minutes.
It's more like 6.
6 minutes. And it's imperceptible that the frame gets closer and closer and closer on the painting. I mean, obviously, by the end of minute 6, you're like, this is a different thing than I've been looking at minute 1.
And as it progresses, as you get closer and closer to the painting, as you would in a museum, you start to realize that what looked like, it's three I'm assuming they're women, although it seems like a lot of people think that they're men.
I think that they're men.
Really? I thought they were women.
I think they're mandarins, and so that's the ponytail is a thing that the mandarins wear.
But they're blank faces, and as it closes in, then you start to see that there is the artist did intend with ever so slightly, you can see like contours to features. They're very abstract, but but it isn't until you get close to a painting that you really start to see how it's made. Like when you're standing in a museum and you look at the brush strokes and really understand like when an arm looks like an arm and then you get close to it and you're like, wow, that's like 700 globs of paint all together. Like, that's the museum experience, which is what we wanted to turn the video into, and which is what I wrote the music for.
Yeah.
To get close to this painting that we saw, and was because we came here obviously with the eye for art. We came to China like looking, okay, what is art like? Not necessarily traditional art of 5,000 years. Like we know what those look like, and they're great to go into a museum and find, even though they're hard to find. But what is modern art? What is stuff that's actually on the wall in a coffee house? And then when we found that one, it struck us so much that we wanted to spend time with it. And that's what that's about.
And also, it was an easy video to put together.
Yeah.
And so if you don't get that, like, no skin off.
Which the music was not easy to.
For all this highfalutin, here's how you look at art. It also is. You took an image and zoomed in.
Yeah.
So if you're not into that, if you don't care to take the time to look at what we're asking you to look at, that's totally fair.
Well, I mean, the video itself is meant to listen to the music.
Yeah.
So the pastime is to look at the art.
Mm-hmm.
That's a byproduct of I'm very proud of this orchestral piece of music that I put together. Like, take 6 minutes and listen to that. Oh, and while you're there, take a look at this painting in case you get bored.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the story of that video.
Love it.
So we're going to talk about 3 more videos, which is kind of the launch of Peter as a character. I mean, obviously he's been in a couple videos recently, and his role has...
And even in old ones. If you have an eagle eye.
Oh yeah, he's like in the background of some...
I'm always an Easter egg somewhere.
But this is like the debut of Peter in his own right as a full-blown character, which insecurity is compelling me to say... I also write these. We both write both, so I want credit, and Peter gets credit for the other stuff.
This is what is so, like, I think the fact that we put these together from scratch. There's like nothing that's borrowed from anything. We write it. We make tea and coffee while we do it. We draw it, we paint it, we act it, we write it, we make the music, we shuffle the files, we move the lights around. We're absolutely every single part of it. And so when it is like they see your face on camera and they're like, I mean, I have friends that have said like, that's I watched one of your videos, it's great, I don't know who this woman is. Like, oh, but I directed the video and I wrote the music to it and I helped write it even to like, and vice versa. Now that this is happening, of if somebody's looking at it and going like, oh wow, I like this Peter guy, like Emily wrote it. Yeah. Or even to just what we were just saying about the like, who's stealing this music?
Right.
Like, we do the whole thing. Nothing is borrowed from anywhere else. So that's the frustrating part of like where you want to be protective of this stuff of like don't just think I took paintings from somewhere else or like and stole things. Like,
that being said, Noodles or Rice?
Yes.
What's the name of it?
Noodles. Bucket of Blood is the movie that it's from.
Yeah. Is a direct parody of this movie, Bucket of Blood. So I did not write this. Peter only kind of wrote this.
I changed the context of it to be not a bucket of blood, to be a bucket of noodles. But you did help me touch up after the fact.
Oh yeah, I edited and I helped. I helped.
And you shot the film.
And I shot the film. But yeah,
not the original '68 Roger Corman movie, but
after making, I did not shoot that. So anyway, I was feeling neglected. But so, Bucket of Noodles, it's a parody of this old Roger Corman film.
Yeah.
Bucket of Blood, which is a kind of
takedown
of pretentious artists in a horror fashion.
Yeah.
And so this was...
It's a beatnik comedy horror movie.
Yeah. This kind of was an effort of, like, finding what Peter's character was going to be. We knew, like, this level of pretension that this artist character had was something that we wanted to try on. And so Peter adapted the opening monologue of the film, which is given by this pretentious artist in a cafe, in a beatnik cafe, and the pretentious artist is kind of the I guess, the antagonist of the film, if the murderer is considered the protagonist.
Yeah.
Murders happen, spoiler alert.
Yeah, he's sort
not
of,
in our video.
The artist himself is the critic that's pushing.
He's acting counter to our point of view character, who is also an anti-hero.
Yeah.
But so we wanted to try on that attitude for Peter's character, and so Peter kind of, to twist it into our world, made it an ode to noodles. Which we hoped, and then from the response, would work for even if you weren't familiar with the film.
Mm-hmm.
And then people like talking about noodles, even if it's pretentious. And so we set up like this kind of coffee house, old beatnik film vibe, where I filmed it on the gimbal handheld, so we're moving around Peter's face, and we have the lighting visible because this is like the Brechtian, you can see the player and you can see the stage that he's on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the treatment you gave the post-production was to make it's black and white.
Yeah.
I did watch it, I just don't have a good visual memory. And give it like the cracks and pops of an old lost film.
And then the composition of beatnik avant-garde jazz behind it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just basically recreating the opening of this film.
Yeah.
The only thing is about noodles rather than art. Or
But
noodles as art.
Because we liked the intensity of that character and wanted to see how it felt for you to try that on.
Yeah, and I mean it rings. I love the film. It's one of my favorite films because it's timeless in that way of like what we're still talking about of people critiquing other people's art and what's real art and what's crap art and like as we're developing this character as a person who is a China splainer that is judging how other people are experiencing things and believes that he has the upper hand of how it should be experienced is what a lot of artists feel from critics. It's why artists hate critics, because the critic is going to say like, well, you pulled this from here and you pulled that from there and you're not totally original about this. And that's kind of what the movie is, aside from the murders, is about. So it was a good place to start to like examine this character of a know-it-all critic.
Yeah, and to give you a little space to test out your acting. And then the fact that went well, we then sat down and wrote a bunch of little scripts inspired by... So this is our point of departure, and I would like to make clear this is not, like... The point of departure is other China vloggers. But we're not trying to be like, you guys are stupid. It is just like the conversations that are being had in that community. What if we dropped this Peter character into it?
Because we're also...
Who is pompous, but also insane. Like, it's not making fun of, it's more, again, a point of departure for our own insane ideas.
And you can't help but be a stranger in a strange land and find yourself saying these absurd things. Like, a lot of this dialogue that we're writing is stuff we've said out of our own mouths.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're singling out one kind of person. We're basically saying, as Westerners in China, this is the stupid crap we say, that you and I say, that other people say, and we're looking at it and laughing at ourselves. Pretty much. That's what we find so funny.
Took. I mean, the explainer has to explain something. So we took these kind of China topics. The two of them being safety in China and dating in China, which if you watch them, they are not really about those things. And I think, it's, again, like Peter was saying, to make it clear that you're joking, especially because the delivery is so deadpan and serious, you can take it like really pretty far.
Yeah.
Like being that, like, I mean, for safety in China is ultimately, go watch it, spoiler alert, is about dragons. Not about like anything real.
Well,
sneakily, ambiguously, we wrote the script. I don't know if you caught on to this, but I've kept everything super vague, that it maybe can refer to safety in America right now, too.
Yes, yeah. It's counter... it has there's so much of, like, if you follow anything, like, it's not like we don't follow politics. We know what's going on, and I watch all the vlogs of what everyone else is worried about, and the bottom line is that the two of us in the middle of Sichuan can't do anything about anything. And we can sit here and worry. We can worry about earthquakes. We can worry about the world falling on our little chicken heads. But there's nothing we can do other than, like, let's just, like, laugh about it. So by taking that stance, like, at least, like, we feel like we are doing something.
Yeah.
And laughing at it just because we need a break. Like, for us to sit. We don't understand politics. We can follow it, but we don't understand what these people are doing.
Yeah.
And that doesn't... You listening to us say what we think about it doesn't help any of us in this situation. So we decide to, like, laugh about it, and that's where that's all coming from.
Well, and that's, to bring back earthquakes, is an interesting... maybe this should have gone in communication, but I just remembered it now. I do not, as a rule, watch television news because I disagree with the premise. I think news is not, it's not entertainment. It should be work. You should have to read through an article that has multiple points for you to digest and that's complicated, rather than like a flashy personality telling you headlines. But we do watch late night TV that skews political.
You also worked in the business too. We both worked in the office. Yeah, you weren't working in the politics side, but we worked on the other side of the wall. Like not the wall. Like you'd stand up and be like, "What are you talking about over there?" Like,
right. You're
in the office.
There was a cubicle wall between me and the hard news people.
Yeah.
But just thinking about that, so we do watch news-based comedy, so we are like pretty up on what's happening in America.
And even comedy-based comedy at this point. Everything is just saturated with just like this oppressive.
But it is weird being in China, so we're not like seeing the direct experiences of these things. Although from our friends and family at home, we do get updates of like how you know people being deported has affected people we know. And just the idea that children are in cages and that's being perpetrated by a government that claims to represent me is horrifying. Just to get on a soapbox here. But so like I'm well versed in the emergencies happening in America, but I do not have direct experience of them right now. Whereas in Luzhou, to bring it back to the earthquake, like I was very scared about earthquakes and like, is it fracking? Are we going to have to worry about our apartment tumbling down around our ears? I freaked out. So I did a lot of research, and it turns out like earthquakes are happening all of the time. And we have, our equipment is getting better and better at sensing them, so we have more and more, if you look for it, news about it. And the fact I read is like, in California, there's an earthquake every other day. So it is like, that's not catastrophe to feel an earthquake. And so there's somewhat of like, I'm freaking out about the earthquakes I feel. I don't need to freak out about the earthquakes I don't feel.
Yeah.
And so to combine this with the news of like, the earthquake happened on Monday, but I don't read Chinese that well, and we don't have a newspaper, and we don't watch the news, not even bringing up issues of censorship. But like, so I don't actually know what's happening in China, so I'm not worried about it, to bring it all back of like, so yeah, like, I don't know, to a certain degree, I do feel like it's important to be well informed, and it's important to participate in your civil society and be a good person. But there is also a degree of which of like knowing about all of this stuff that you can't do anything about is just making you crazy. And so like, are you safe? Maybe, sure.
As safe as you can get, and then if you are fairly safe and you can do something to help other people, that's great. But don't make yourself sick.
Yeah, and that, like, the unknown is not what's dangerous to you. Dragons are what's dangerous to you.
I would say, don't make yourself sick, but also don't make other people sick. That's really the upsetting part of our real. If there's any,
I mean, that is an actual problem with the YouTube.
Yeah.
Not just explainer culture, but like hate speech culture, which YouTube is perfectly tolerant of.
Yeah.
Is that it is spreading this fear that's unjustified, but it is really stirring people up, and that's having real world consequences. So yeah, as like Peter was saying, if we're actually saying anything, and we're not really, it is.
We're talking about dragons.
Maybe if you can approach the world with a more measured point of view and less fear, that's going to be better for all of us.
That's all we can do, because we're just sitting here trying not to get crushed by earthquakes.
Yeah. And ultimately, there's nothing you can do about an earthquake. It's going to happen or it's not going to happen. It's all about your reaction. You can't control other people's thoughts, but you can control your own behavior.
Good reaction time. That's why I play more video games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then, even sillier, dating in China.
Yeah.
Has no uplifting social message. It's just us goofing around.
And looking at, and it's not just China vlog, it's anywhere. Not even outside of our own culture. One of the biggest vlogs thing is like how to date, and it's hilarious because I'm middle-aged and I don't even remember the last time I dated. We barely even dated. We just knew each other. Like,
we knew each other and then we got married.
So the idea of us giving any kind of experience to how to move to China and date it's funny enough as like that should just be a title and walk away from it. So we just thought, like, let's play with it.
And then our long-running joke amongst each other is that babies are fiends for yogurt. So that's where the line is, I'm not going to share my yogurt, is because, of course, the assumption is you would know that a baby, if you have a baby, they're going to drink all the yogurt.
Yeah, they're going to take your yogurt from you.
Yeah. So look out for our yogurt in joke. That'll come back. But there's not, I guess that one is where editing is super important, because you have the live reading of the live performance of drinking a yogurt, and if you were on stage, it would be super important for you to, like, in the moment be drinking your yogurt and you were able. It's one take. Yeah, it's one take, but you were able to cut it and crop it in ways that gave it a lot of movement and depth to what was actually like a very static action.
Yeah, and once you put the soundtrack in it, and using just simple things like zooming and little effects, that like it actually just becomes like me sitting in front. Like, it took us 3 or 4 minutes to write it. Yeah. It took us a minute and a half to film it.
Yeah.
Like.
And actually, that last line, I'm not going to share my yogurt, went through several iterations, and it's another case of, like, it hinged on the word share. Like, we tried other words and it didn't work.
Yeah. It had to be share.
Yeah. So that actually. A simple concept, but pretty technical in execution.
A lot of work goes into this stuff. Yeah,
but it's fun. Yeah, I recommend it. That's my new catchphrase. Let's go on to watch it.
Where'd watch it go? Watch it. Watch it.
We gave you some homework last week to watch the animated Netflix series 𝗂𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏, which was created by 𝗖𝗵cie_his𝗴𝗾𝗏, who is the art director for *BoJack Horseman.
Watch that.
And I just saw a story today that the animation staff of *BoJack just successfully unionized, and I think it might be the same staff that works on 𝗂𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏. So, way to go, guys! Fight for your rights. But so we're going to talk about 𝗂𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏, which is the buddy comedy of two humanoid bird characters. That is, on the surface, very silly, but as you get into it, similarly to *BoJack, it's actually dealing with a lot of issues. And you were saying that what you appreciate about 𝗂𝗏 and 𝗏𝗏 is that, unlike *BoJack, they are good people. *BoJack asks you to spend time with a guy who's, like,
just been a crap.
Yeah,
his entire life.
He's been dealt an unfair hand in life, but he's also responded by acting like a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas these two young women are doing their best, and they're being good people, and they're getting through.
If they're an inconvenience to anybody, it's only because they're just trying to have a good time. They're not trying to hurt anybody ever.
Yeah, well, and that they're committing social faux pas or anxiety and anxiety-inducing stuff.
They're
rather than like encouraging a drug addiction. Or something.
Or like screwing over somebody's career.
Yeah. They're more in the realm of like good people who.
They're good people.
They're good people.
As animals.
Yeah, and I don't know. The show is a lot of fun, and it does get into some heavy stuff by the end, but it's totally earned, and it's also not like, again, only because she works on both shows and she's so responsible for the character of both shows. She doesn't write BoJack, but she's part of the creative team. So I'll compare, like, some BoJack is always like, the second to last episode of the season is going to be devastating.
Yeah.
And the Tuca and Birdie dealt with some hard stuff, but it also was like pretty light about it the whole time, I would say. Not making light of it, but it wasn't like that you needed like an hour of silence afterwards to process what you just watched.
Well, they do nicely start to allude to that there's something, like this is just episode by episode, that there's a story that's going to play out through the entire
the trauma
season.
Doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and so that it's build up to that. Actually, you feel like you're like, oh, these are just like some wayward growing up kids that are finding their way into adult life, and by the time they start to like drop these little hints that they have these issues, you're just like, oh, so it gets heavier.
And also like, but from the perspective of a woman watching it, the trauma is rooted in small incidents that every woman has faced, and like it is an early conflict in the series is Birdie works in an office with this guy who keeps like talking over her in meetings and stealing her ideas and not crediting her and like mildly sexually harassing her, which is just like that's sadly just part of the fabric of being a woman in current society. But the way that it's told, it doesn't feel like issue of the week. It feels like we got a comedy about being a woman. Because it is like, that stuff is shitty when it happens to you, but you also can make fun of it, and it also can be funny.
Well, I really like how, like, they have one character in particular who is, I mean, he's just a loudmouth, but is given, like...
Played by the rooster,
yeah. That it does say things where our main character, Birdie, like, she endures it in the moment, and then is like, I don't feel good about this. Like, should I? And everyone else tells her that, like, like, oh, that's fine. That's just the way he is. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel preachy. It actually feels like you're with her of like, is she blowing it out of proportion? She's asking if she's blowing it out of proportion.
Yeah, that's, I mean, of the two main characters, I would say, like, I identify with Birdie, mm-hmm. and I have had best friends like Tuca. Mm-hmm. Who is much more assertive and loud and go get him. Mm-hmm. So, and it is part of the issue of gender-based harassment is that, like, in the moment, it's not always easy to pinpoint what's wrong with a given mm-hmm. situation. So I really appreciated that, and I really loved that it was just like unapologetically about girls, but also like not just like...
It's not man-bashing either.
Yeah, it's not man-bashing, and it's not like ultra-femme because there's only one way to be a woman. It was mm-hmm. very inclusive and open about, like, all... Women's experiences are varied, and also men are not on center stage here. Mm-hmm. And that's not a big deal.
And gender and race. Yeah. And, like, the supermodels are all actually, like, plants because they're all really tall.
Yeah.
So it's absurd in a way that, like... and your Animal Farm kind of inclusion of anthropomorphic kind of characters, that it's inclusive to the entire vegetation world as well.
And I appreciated, and this was a conscious effort, and I know Lisa Hanawalt has a podcast with another female Hollywooder, Emily Heller, who is a writer and producer on Barry, actually, called Baby Geniuses. And they talked about this side recommendation, Baby Geniuses is a fun podcast. They had a guest on, Jessica Gao, who is another TV writer for Rick and Morty. And they talked about their screenwriting practices, and that each of them tries, when they write background characters, they make an effort to give, you don't have to always give a background character a name. You can just say, truck driver or janitor or whatever the person needs to be. And they were saying that they give those characters names, and they give those names that would be female or of an ethnicity, because otherwise, in their experience, that role will get filled by a white guy. And nothing's wrong with white guys. I'm married to one. But it is it's so seen as the default, so that's their effort to make that not the default, is to introduce that at the script level, that let's have a woman in the background here. And I really appreciated it. It's such a subtle thing, but on Tuca and Birdie, that most of the background characters are also women. And the characters who are male have a specific reason to be male. So they never even point this out, but it is the default of the show is woman, and that was really cool. And again, it's not man-hating whatever. At no point do they say they hate men. And there's Birdie's boyfriend is a positive, good character who also gets a significant amount of screen time, but it's just men aren't the default, and that was a really nice world to hang out in. Yeah. Because it's actually a world that I live in. I don't actually, as a kindergarten teacher, most of the staff is women. So most of my background characters are women.
And birds.
And birds. Yeah, we have a bird. But you had a good point about 90s.
A lot of it really reminded me of in the 90s. There was a pretty big movement, both women and men, of these the movies they call the slice of life movement.
In comics,
but it was also in movies, and sort of in the slackerish music kind of scene. But the comics themselves were all small indie. At the time, I was working for the Ninja Turtles, so I was kind of stuck somewhere in indie.
The creator of the Ninja Turtles, not actual turtles.
Turtles were my boss. So there is a mainstream world that I was dealing with, but most of my friends that worked in that world in comics were reading these underground indie comics, and it was a big up and coming thing of comics were changing. It's funny that we end up now with these Avenger movies and stuff, which I love, that they're fantastic, but that was kind of
well, the narrative was superheroes are for kids. Here's comics that are for grown-ups, that are about grown-ups' problems.
Yeah, about relationships, and sometimes they can be surreal, and some of them are murder mysteries, and
a lot of them are about how hard it is to be a struggling artist.
Yes, that's what comic book artists were doing in the 90s. But there was a huge faction of them where these creators with titles like Dirty Plot and Naughty Bits and the Homicidal Lesbian Terrorist, and that there were these women indie comics that were kind of surreal, dealing with very real stories about women and their lives, that it kind of disappeared out of the 90s. The whole scene itself kind of collapsed, I guess. But all these women, I'm not sure, some of them are still working in comics, I can see, but this seems like an outgrowth of maybe these creators that are working on things like Tuca and Birdie I'd love to speak to them to like find out like were you reading these comic books back in the 90s? Did you grow up with these things? Like where like the voice themselves are women's voices, which is why I recognize it as a man of like I've heard these voices before. They're not only the women that I choose to hang out with, but they were the artists that I was reading when I was younger. Like where did those artists go? Yeah. Oh, they're appearing now on indie TV.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
The aesthetic,
I don't know what that channel is.
The aesthetic was more than just like anthropomorphized birds. It was also like silly things like
buildings, cars.
Yeah, and like turtles as end tables, moving end tables that then could travel across town and like infest stuff, or like scene changes being like a literal jumping of the characters from one scene past a collage pastiche into another scene, and like that the reality was being stretched
in a way that was very like old school, like Warner Brothers, but not in the male like threes. I'm trying to think of old who are the three black and white. Old
Stooges.
The Stooges and stuff like that. Like there's a very like male sense of taking that absurdity of comedy from back then that has transferred over into male comedy. But there's a female version of that has this absurdist, and it does tend to be by personalizing, characterizing inanimate objects and
and I think giving voice to feelings that we usually repress is a big part of it.
Because
and putting outward aggression where usually it's just swallowed anxiety.
Yeah. Because I noticed that in what's the show that just ended with the Queen's girls?
Broad City.
Yeah,
has a lot of that same kind of. That was live action, but it was also very zany, and their reactions would be.
And when they did do a cartoon version,
outsized,
they did do a whole episode that was a cartoon drug strip that was like, oh my god, this is 1990s, mid 90s indie women comics. Mm-hmm. Is that where that went? It's back. Woohoo!
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I would like to think.
So write in with your comments.
Yeah. Yeah, and so...
do we have one for next week?
We do have one for next week. We're going to go way back in time. We were talking all about women. Now we're going to talk about men only. Not quite, but mostly. Monty Python and Mr. Show in conversation with each other. Because, of course, all sketch comedy has been influenced by Monty Python, but I think we'll talk about this next week, that there's a direct line between what the Pythons were doing and what Bob and David were doing. So dust off your old VHS tapes, check that out, and we'll be back next week with more China spoilers. In the meantime, noodles to you.
Noodles.